I'm going to introduce the introducer, who is Dr. Ed Bilski. Ed is a PhD, who I met decades ago, given his interest in peptide chemistry and pharmacology. He's done a remarkable job at University of New England in merging art, science, undergraduate medical education, and also a very top-notch NIH-funded preclinical laboratory on pharmacology of pain. So Edward can make introductions for people. We'll try to stay on time. I realize each of you could speak for an afternoon. You've been very selectively chosen, given your expertise, which is not disappointed so far. So thank you very much. I'll turn it over to the moderators for the rest of the afternoon.
Thank you, Dan, and welcome everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invite. The talks have been just fantastic this morning, not just quality of science, but inspirational and some of the progress being made. I think we'll see that continuing into the afternoon talks. I did find out that I have control here with timers, lights, and sound. So I'm going to give each person 15 minutes on a 3-minute wrap-up. That should keep us to roughly about 20 minutes each with questions after each talk. And then we should have some time at the end to kind of sum it all up or start the next session a little bit early. So with that, I'd like to introduce Stephan Schug. He's going to be giving us an update on systemic agents for treatment of acute pain.
Good afternoon. I hope you have all recovered from the lunch. It was really a very healthy lunch, so in line with the last presentation before the break, and I hope it being light you will not fall asleep. The reason I think that Danny has invited me is a topic which was already alluded to briefly before, and McIntyre spoke, who so cleverly conducted the working group which did 2 previous editions of this ANZCA document. And it is my pleasure today to briefly show this document and then give you a very good summary, because then there will be detailed lectures afterwards illustrating what is in these guidelines. These are my disclosures in case people lose interest, that all of the money goes to my university unit and not to me privately. That's part of the deal in Australia. The document I'm presenting is Acute Pain Management Scientific Evidence, and for those of you who haven't seen it, I have a copy here for people to look at it. It is the 4th edition, 2015, after previous editions were done around every 5 years, 1999, 2005, and 2010. And it is not only available as a book, but also, and that would be of interest to all of you possibly, is available for free to download as a PDF from the website of the Faculty of Pain Medicine of the college. I will show that at the end again as my last slides for those of you who are interested in downloading it. Everybody calls it the ANZCA guidelines, but it is not a guideline. We have deliberately not made it as a guideline, but as a summary of all available evidence in the area of acute pain management, and we think that this is a more appropriate way because it will then enable people to write their own guidelines based on the evidence, but considering the local circumstances of the environment they are working in. This is a little bit a scrambled slide because my slide was changed from Apple to Windows today when I downloaded it here, and because the operating system has only Japanese letters, I felt that it would be a major effort to change that back on a computer where I can't read any of the commands. So please apologize for that. But this is more or less a classification which is from systematic reviews as level 1 evidence down to recommended best practice, and you will see throughout the document what the levels are. We have introduced, and that is also thanks to PAM, a system by which we show what happened in the last 5 years. So for every key message, you can see if it is new or unchanged or strengthened or weakened or qualified or reversed. And there are definitions for all of these terms. It is nice to see that reversal, which would mean something was true 5 years ago and is no longer true now, actually happened very rarely. Out of our over 600 key messages, only 3 were reversals, which is really reassuring. And the only one of possible clinical relevance is that new data now show that magnesium infusions are analgesic, and this is in contrast to the meta-analysis in the past which showed there was no benefit from infusing magnesium. That's the only reversal of relevance. The edition has become very big, so we ended now with nearly 650 pages. It's based on 8,600 references which were analyzed and quality scored, and there are what is regarded as the most important 669 key messages in them. These are more or less condensing the information. If you don't want to read the 650 pages, it is enough to read the 670 key messages. The document is getting more and more international acceptance. Already the previous editions were endorsed by many organizations, but this one has now the largest number of endorsements, in particular of relevance, the International Association for the Study of Pain, hence the special interest group Acute Pain we are just attending at the moment, but also the European Society of Regional Anesthesia, for example, and many national organizations all over the world. So it really has, and I think that is something we have observed over the last 15 years, become the world document for the summary of evidence in pain management. It is accompanied by a practical guide, and I do this now for the second time in parallel to the guidelines. Again, I have a copy here if anybody wants to look. This is a much thinner book, and I call it the cookbook, because it more or less takes the guidelines and transfers them into practical, useful information, how you can actually manage pain in your institution, including protocols and other very practical things. If you look at the document, then you will see key messages presented in this way. At the end of each key message, there is the letter for what it is, for example, in this case, new, and then the level of evidence. And then, as mentioned before, we have actually clinical practice guidelines which are not evidence-based, and we call these tick boxes, and there is one here. And because we are talking about systemic analgesia, we have already talked about opioids. I picked deliberately this one because this is on multimodal post-operative pain management. And the tick box is more or less giving the definition for use of combinations of analgesics with different mode or site of action. And the data which make multimodal analgesia useful is if the combination improves pain control, reduces opioid consumption as discussed in the first session today, therefore has an opioid sparing effect, and hopefully by doing this is also reducing adverse effects. And drugs which are in combination with opioids doing all these three things should be regarded as useful components of multimodal analgesia. If you look at the current evidence, we know for paracetamol in NSAIDs that there is such an effect. We know that it is useful to combine paracetamol with non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, levodopa, and that the combination is superior to either drug alone. We know that pregabalin can have an effect here. This is one of the latest meta-analyses in the DGA. And if you look at the summary, you have a significant reduction in pain score as rest during movement, opioid sparing effect, and you have reduction of nausea and vomiting and pruritus. Thereby, the three criteria are fulfilled here. You have ketamine, where there are pretty much identical findings with regard to the three outcomes. And here of interest, and that is possibly true for pregabalin too, that the bigger the surgery, the worse the pain, the more useful it is to use ketamine in this case, for example, upper abdominal thoracic and major orthopedic surgery has the best evidence. Alpha-2 agonists, you will hear more about these from Esther after my talk, but again, decreased post-operative opioid consumption, pain intensity, and nausea, but clearly there are issues like bradycardia and arterial hypertension one has to consider, and also sedation might sometimes be a problem. Intraoperative, perioperative systemic lidocaine infusions. There are good data supporting the use with regard to decreasing post-op pain intensity, reducing opioid consumption, better return of GI function and shortened the hospital stay in this meta-analysis, and it has more or less become something like the poor man's epidural, because it does some of the things epidural analgesia does with a lower range of problems and side effects, and possibly safer, although there are also issues dealing with systemic iodine infusion. The one which was a little bit surprising is dexamethasone. We all who are anaesthetists are using dexamethasone as a prophylaxis for nausea and vomiting. There's very good evidence to support that, but there is in this meta-analysis also the finding that dexamethasone improves analgesia, but if you look at the improvement in the range of 0.5 on a 10-point scale, or the opioid sparing in the range of 2.3 milligrams in 24 hours, this is statistically relevant, but I would really wonder how relevant that is in the setting of multimodal analgesia. I would therefore think if you use it for nausea prophylaxis, fine, but to promote that as a component of multimodal analgesia is possibly a little bit over the top. Overall, if you add it all together, there is currently in this new document level 1 evidence for the effectiveness of the following components, and I'm only talking about systemic multimodal analgesia. Nerve blocks and regional anesthesia clearly is also an important component, but might really for systemic. Paracetamol, NSAIDs, oxyds, alpha-2 delta ligands, systemic local anesthetics, ketamine, alpha-2 agonists, and corticosteroids in small quantity, because as I mentioned, only very limited benefit. Now the problem we are facing at the moment is that it is unclear which combinations of how many compounds should be used, and you can imagine how many trials you would have to undertake to analyze each of these combinations. In practical terms, I think it makes sense to say that pretty much routine use should be paracetamol, apoxib, and pregabalin or gabapentin, depending on what your system funds. And then in the selected patients, low-dose ketamine, and here we see in particular advantages in opioid-tolerant patients, and that is in line with the evidence and fits a little bit the discussion on opioid-induced hyperalgesia. We have clearly in patients who have not only but also a major component of neuropathic pain. And there are debates on the prevention of chronic pain. The Australian-New Zealand Clinical Trials Network has just submitted with us as principal investigators a 4,000 patient trial, ketamine versus placebo, for the prevention of chronic post-surgical pain, because we think that the Cochrane meta-analysis in this topic is based primarily on very small trials and shows a significant benefit of ketamine, but it's a meta-analysis of very small trials. Systemic local anesthetics, I mentioned lidocaine in particular, in abdominal surgery, and alpha-2 agonists in particular, then useful if there is also agitation or withdrawal from opioids, or even more about the usefulness in the next lecture. The other issue I want briefly to touch, because it fits into the concept we are discussing, is procedure-specific pain management. The data are clearly showing, and that is even shown for paracetamol, that an analgesic may have different efficacy in different surgical settings. If you look at the number needed to treat for paracetamol in orthopedic pain versus dental pain versus gynecological pain, you get 3 different NMTs. And the differences disappear in most of the meta-analyses because they are doing the maximum number of trials combined into one meta-analysis, and such little nuances are disappearing. Therefore, we are actually thinking that because different surgical procedures cause different pain states, a simple example would be a hip replacement versus a colectomy, have different severity in different locations, it might be useful to have a procedure-specific approach. And such a procedure-specific approach, evidence-based, has been carefully analyzed by the Prospect Group, which many of you are possibly familiar with. We have just actually now become a branch of the European Society of Regional Anesthesia and Pain Therapy, so Prospect has a new home, which was a little bit better than this not-for-profit company in the United Kingdom, although it was the only time in my life that I was a company director for a while. But this is no longer the case. But we are providing evidence-based, procedure-specific guidelines for all these operations. You can go to the website, again, it's completely free. You can look into the details. This does not exist as a book because it has so many layers down to each individual abstract you can actually read on the website that it is impossible to put that into a book. But if you are lazy, you can just go to the overall recommendations, and then, for example, here for non-cosmetic breast surgery, you get a flow chart. What is the current best evidence? And you see again throughout there is multimodal analgesia everywhere, and these types of guidelines are available for all these operations. You will never be able, as you can imagine, to do all surgery because each of these meta-analyses for one procedure takes a lot of money, a lot of time, and it's really difficult to do. So therefore we have selected the procedures which are very common and also a wide range, everything from gynecology to obstetrics, from minor surgery to major surgery to joint replacement to abdominal surgery, so that there are examples for all these surgeries. But clearly this will not be possible for every surgery ever done. And there will often not be enough data, as we saw for prostatectomy, where our attempt to make evidence-based guidelines was primarily flawed by the lack of good evidence to do that. This is the 3 minutes, very nice. I will be on time because I reached my conclusions. So I hope I could show you that the evidence at the moment, summarized in the documents I mentioned, is that pain management after surgery and trauma should be multimodal and procedure-specific. I think we've already heard enough. Opioid-sparing techniques should be used whenever possible to reduce adverse effects, but also to improve recovery, because we know from many data that, in particular, nausea, vomiting, and constipation can delay recovery and delay discharge from hospital. Paracetamol, non-selective NSAIDs, coxes, and pregabalin are possibly at the moment the most important components of such multimodal analgesia, but we need to acknowledge that there are other components and we need to learn more about how to combine multi-agents into a multimodal approach. And the evidence, again, is on the website of the faculty for the document I was discussing here and under www.postforpain.org for prospect. Thank you very much for listening.
So we do have time for a question or two.
Yeah, let's stay on time. I think the skills of our speaker.
Dan Carr from Boston. Dan Carr from Boston. When you were re-examining the prospect recommendations, did you also consider areas of gaps of knowledge or goals that might be achievable but were not quite yet achievable, so with a relatively low investment of effort, you could either decide they were achievable or unachievable?
There are actually at the end of each recommendation on the website, but also in the peer-reviewed publications which accompany each of these procedures, there is always a paragraph where we look at where is evidence missing, what can we do better, and so on. Yes, we have done it because we think it is actually important. And prostatectomy, as I mentioned, was a procedure which shocked us the most because we wanted to write a nice evidence-based guideline, and there was really nothing to guide practice pretty much.
Yeah, thanks, Stephan. Very nice. When we talk about multimodal and putting this many drugs into patients, we always talk about efficacy, and we touched this discussion earlier in the morning. We are basically missing the safety part, because usually the studies are not powered to check safety, and we have no safety data. And just so, my question is how we can get the safety data. The second, evidence-based, of course, and the second is can you just give your opinion about ketamine, lidocaine infusion in patients and how to use it on normal wards?
You're absolutely right. The safety data are not done very well, but we heard from Ken that even for something we used for about hundreds of years, we don't know the real safety data because we have poor ways of measuring the safety and actually reporting it. So yes, this is a major deficit and we need to work much more on that. And I guess possibly some of the current online data collection systems like what Pain Out is doing are possibly in the future also able to look at adverse effects, or possibly what we heard today about this electronic database might be a very clever way of identifying if groups of people on a certain drug have more side effects than others. And as you say, we need large numbers because side effects luckily are rare. That makes finding differences very important. With regard to running infusions of ketamine or lidocaine, our policy is that we run lidocaine only perioperatively until the patient leaves the recovery room. And if you look at most of the studies which show the benefit, then it is possibly enough to do that. And you know that there is a meta-analysis from Darmstadt which says there is a classical preventive effect insofar as the lidocaine works for more than 5.5 lives, or longer than 5.5 half-lives of the drug. We run ketamine on all our normal wards, possibly at the moment 20 to 30% of our post-operative patients have a continuous low dose of ketamine infusion in my service, and there are no real risks with this because you don't get any change of vital parameters, and so we don't even have a specific monitoring protocol for the ketamine infusion.
Yeah, I think these are very useful statements. We should do that, like putting them in such a guideline, even if they are not evidence-based, because I mean this is important for the people outside. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thanks for that.
One last question.
Yes, as to the safety aspects, I think it's very important that we don't actually know the safety of daycare surgery post-operative when they go home. And that's more than 50% of the cases in Western countries. And for instance, gabapentin and clothing, we had that experience that a lot of cases of fainting occurred when sending these patients home with this nerve. So we can't do it, and I think, because the evidence is not there that it's a little problematic. The advice is to use gabapentin and maybe also use clothing when you have these kind of effects after discharge.
But I mean, that problem is also true for patients, like Penny mentioned, these many cases where patients have a single treatment shot, reach an anesthetic, and then go home, and then get their first pain experience and start an opioid at home, which by itself is also a considerable risk factor. So again, I think we need to look by far more what we can do better for daycare surgery, because this is where the problems occur. But we know also, for example, from studies and attempts we are at the moment having to prevent that sending patients home with large amounts of opioids after daycare surgery then results in diversion into black market and issues like that. So there is actually a wide range of problems with day-to-day surgery which goes far beyond the possibilities we can discuss just at the moment. But thank you